Does anybody really know how much it costs to hike the Appalachian Trail? I am going to be attempting the AT in spring of 2024, so I decided to do some research. My research took me to a couple reputable sources. One, the AT Conservancy, and the subreddit Appalachian Trail. So this is Dave. I am an aspiring Appalachian Trail thru-hiker who is studying and researching so that I can be well equipped and well prepared to hit the Appalachian Trail in the spring of 2024. In this video, I try to narrow down or estimate the total costs of hiking the Appalachian Trail. I estimate the categorized costs of the trail, and I do this so that we can have at least a good idea on how much it's going to cost us to hike the AT. I went to the Appalachian Trail Conservancy, and this is what they had to say as far as the budget expected for an AT thru-hiker. So I'm going to read this. Most hikers spend an average of $1,200 to $1,400 a month during the hike itself. Disciplined, frugal hikers willing to forego motels, restaurants, and other amenities get away with less. Those who like staying in motels and eat at restaurants when they have the opportunity can easily spend much more. When it comes to Reddit, the Appalachian Trail FAQ page, the quote is as follows. The thru-hiker can expect to spend somewhere between $2,500 and $10,000 on the trip, with $4,000 to $6,000 range being the most common in recent years. Hiking speed, number of overnight town stops, and personal habits like drinking and smoking can all be big factors in how much a thru-hike ultimately costs. Then I looked at my survey results because I surveyed the Reddit community on the subreddit Appalachian Trail, and I actually got 15 replies from people who actually hiked the trail. So I'm not going to get really too deeply into it, but the range was, and this is monthly budget for the 15 Redditors who hike the AT. $600 per month. This is a claimed minimalist who didn't stay in towns at all. Another one, $808 with $3,300 for the on-trail expenses, and they hiked the trail in 4.5 months. There were others with $1,000, $1,125, and then it continued to go up $1,200, $1,250, $1,300, $1,439, $1,500, $1,700s, which were, this person stated that they had multiple expensive meals at every stop, lots of alcohol and marijuana, a new sleeping bag, frequent hostel stays, and 2 solo nights in a hotel, which sounds pretty expensive. $1,800 per month was the higher end, and the person stated that it was like an 8 out of 10 on the comfort scale. So I took this information and I feel like, okay, that's a huge range from $600 to $1,800 per month. And if you can get it down to $4,000 to $6,000 for the entire trip, that would be like $800 to $1,200 a month, if not a little more. So I'm looking at saving somewhere between $6,000 and $9,000 to hike the AT, but I also am going to try to find ways to speed it up. So let's look at the summaries for the different categories of expenses that you're going to incur on the Appalachian Trail. First one is resupplies. People were saying that they average between $2,100 and $2,500 for the 6 months on resupplies. That would include buying food that you're going to take back on the trail and any other small expenses that you might incur on the trail. Lodging is broken down into the following categories: hotels, hostels, and tenting at hostels. People that stayed in hotels, they broke it up saying that the southern hotels were less expensive, the northern hotels were more expensive, and they would spend anywhere from $900 and $1,800 on their trip down south, and then between like 2,000 and 3,000 up north. The hostels, the 6-month average was between $1,260 and $2,500 for staying at hostels for the entire trip, and in many cases that includes breakfasts. Tenting at hostels was between $210 and $1,470. Again, you're seeing a very wide range of expenses. So I'm just trying to give it this quick overview, but then I'll kind of talk a little bit of some of the nuances in a few minutes. Eating in towns, restaurants average between $450 and $1,260 for the entire trip. Fast food, $150 and $630 for their average. Grocery stores, $300 and $420. Laundry costs between $150 and $420 on the high end. Shuttles cost between $600 and $2,100. Gear changes, primarily shoes, at $100 a pop. You could buy 4 to 6 pairs depending on which shoes you're buying. I'm going to be primarily hiking in Ultra Lone Peak 6s, which is my shoe of choice. I might also try some other shoes before I go, but that's that. Also, there's the category of donation to trail angels. Anywhere from $300 to $600 is what people spent as donations. Shipping costs about $120 for people shipping items to themselves on trail or shipping home equipment that they don't need. Personal habits ranged between $210 and $800, and that includes alcohol, caffeine, and ice cream. I guess the big three, right? Post-hike expenses, they said that was all personal, based on personal needs, and those needs, of course, vary. Post-COVID inflation, many of them mention that the prices have gone up anywhere from 30 to 50% in their price, and it will vary as I get closer to the trail. What I mean by that is who knows what's going to happen in the next 3.5 months before I even jump on the trail, if inflation is going to be up or down or what have you. I do have another PDF that I'm going to put in the description breaking down all the categories, so that should be helpful to you guys who are aspiring to hike the AT like myself. After looking at this data and seeing such a wide range in the costs to hike the Appalachian Trail, I find that lodging is a huge discrepancy. If you stay in hotels, it's going to cost you so much more. If you stay in hostels, it'll be less. If you tent out at hostels, it'll be less. And if you get into town, get what you need, and then go back on the trail and sleep on the trail again or in a shelter, then of course it's not going to cost you anything other than the expenses to go into town. The other thing, eating in towns, many people will eat in restaurants. Some others will eat out of grocery stores or convenience stores. They'll just grab and go. I intend on buying a pre-cooked chicken every time I get into town. I think it'll just be really fun to eat a whole chicken sitting in front of, people watching people go by in the town. So that's just to each his own, right? So many variables. It doesn't really give you a sense of what one answer will be for hiking the AT. You have to base your budget on what you can afford and what you find important. If it's important to stay at a restaurant, then stay at a restaurant, or let's not say stay at a restaurant, eat at a restaurant, stay at a hotel. Those are going to be on the high end. But if you think that you want to be a little more frugal and you don't need all the creature comforts when you get off the trail, then you can stay at hostels and whatnot, or even stay in town overnight. My thoughts after reviewing all this data is people spend between $600 and $1,800 per month hiking the AT. Again, my expectation is to save between $6,000 and $9,000, to aim to spend closer to $1,200, but also be frugal where I feel I need to be frugal. And this also gives me a buffer so that I have a higher likelihood of finishing the AT, at least financially. So that brings me to the trade-offs. As I had started to allude to just a moment ago, there's comfort versus cost, hotel versus sleeping in your tent. There's McDonald's, for example, versus a full restaurant, or even mom and pops versus a restaurant. You could spend, this is my thought, you could spend so much less to get 1,000 calories at McDonald's as I would on just the tip at a restaurant. You can buy burger patties for about $2 a pop and have 6 of them for $12, as opposed to sitting in a restaurant paying $30, $40 to eat a full meal. So that's just a thought there. Saving money pre-trail. It's very important that when you do realize that you're going to hike the Appalachian Trail, then you need to start saving money at that time. The other thing you need to do, in my opinion, is get your equipment as early as you can and start practicing with it. I have done a couple shakedown hikes at this point. I have probably 90% of my gear, and I'm still waiting for a couple pieces of, I think, clothing primarily, in order to then buy my backpack for the AT. So that is going to be for the next 3 or 4 months, having a full pack, finding out kind of just what works, what doesn't, what I can get rid of, what I can't get rid of. I'll also be looking at the weather situation. So the best thing you can do is start saving early, buying your equipment early so you don't have to do big impulse buys while you're out on the trail. And then you can avoid staying at hotels. You can be wise about the restaurants. You can limit your length of stay in towns. You can couple up or tramily up if you want to stay in a hotel. You can speed up in order to finish quicker, but try to do it without injuries. So, for example, avoiding hotels to save money. They're expensive, upwards to $100 a night, if not more. As you come north, apparently the expenses become greater. The woods cost nothing. Campgrounds are low expense. So be judicious about that. And like for me, when my wife comes and visits, I'll probably stay in a hotel and not make her sleep in a tent. Be wise about restaurants. Look for diners or buffets. There's a nice buffet in Gorham, New Hampshire. Actually, there's probably several Chinese food buffets, and those are less expensive, and you can eat until your heart's content. I'll personally be sticking to mom and pop stores, fast food chains, and buffets the best I can. And then limit the length of stays in towns. Remember, each day in the town is more expensive than a day on the trail. My thoughts are, for the most part, refresh, resupply, and then go back to the trail. You can't do that in every town. I know it's going to be too far away from the trail to get safely back there in time, but that's kind of my initial thought. Do what you need to, clean up, rest up, get back on the trail. The longer in town, the less you want to get back on trail. So you I think you get lulled into the comfort of being in town. So I don't want to do that personally, and you can make your decision. Speed up your hike to finish more quickly. The more time on the trail, the more expensive it becomes. More time with lodging, resupplies, laundry, laundry and eating leads to longer time on the trail. For example, if you went to town every 5 days instead of 4 days, you'll save about a month at the end of the trail. I know that logistically that's not always going to work out, but if you can continue to hike a little bit longer, maybe to the next shelter or to the next town, then you're going to save more money overall. Then, as far as your average pace, so let's talk about this for a second. I've analyzed the numbers, and what I found is about every 3 miles more that you average per day takes off about a month on the trail. So if you average 9 miles per day, which is very low, it's going to take you about 8 months to finish the trail. 12 miles per day, you drop down to 6 months roughly to finish the trail. 15 miles a day is 5 months. 18 miles a day is 4 months. And 21 miles per day is 3.5 months. And that's the average pace per day. And that includes getting off the trail, getting back on the trail, moving down the trail. So the longer you stay off the trail, the more you have to make up for it if you have a deadline of, say, 5 months at 15 miles per day. So you have to do a lot of days over 15 miles if you take a 0 or if you take a Nero. The next thing, as a slower or larger hiker, the longer I take, the more calories burned, the more cost it is to eat. I'm looking at more high density foods, stuff with a lot of fat, because fat has 9 calories per gram as opposed to carbohydrate, which is 4 calories per gram. I'm also going to be doing more of a meat-based diet. I speak a lot about my carnivore diet that I'm following, that I'm losing weight, or rather, I'm using the carnivore diet currently to lose weight. And when I get on trail, I know that's not going to be totally practical. It'll be very impractical. But I want to stick to it as much as I can as far as getting enough protein and enough fat to sustain me. I may add in some other things, but for the most part, it will be fairly ketovore, carnivore based. So, financial planning 101 for the Appalachian Trail. And for everybody who flunked out of accounting, math, finance, this may not be for you, but I'm going to talk a little bit about financial planning 101 for the Appalachian Trail. First of all, it depends on where you are in life. Say somebody that's single, in their 20s, renting an apartment with a halfway decent job, can save up their money and cut their lease on their apartment and just go off on the AT with those expenses. Somebody who's married with kids in their 30s and 40s, with a mortgage and a decent job, it's going to take a little bit more. And those folks may not be able to do this hike because a lot of people kind of forego the hike to raise their families, or you can do it with your family. So that's an option. Retired 60-something with, say, a low mortgage and some savings, it's going to be a little easier for you, but the costs of paying for all your expenses while you're gone, just like anybody with a house and with regular expenses that they're leaving that they still have to pay. For me, I'm not retired. I have a mortgage. I'm 50-something, and I'm near empty nest. My youngest is in high school, and he'll be finishing in June of next year. I'm starting the trail in March. I'll be coming off trail to go to his graduation and keeping in communication with him while I'm gone. But the bills are not going to stop for me while I'm on the AT like many other people. So that's going to play into how much you need to save for the AT. I'm going to be getting a separate checking account with a debit card. This is so that I don't start to dip into the money in a regular checking account that has to pay the bills. And it'll be easier for me to check on how much I have in that account. My final thoughts. The number one reason for people leaving the trail that I've been researching and read about, I think the AT Conservancy said it, was finances. So it's best to store up now for your trail later instead of just jumping on the trail and thinking, oh, I have plenty of money, and then it disappearing. So pay attention. For me, I'm sharing what one of the Redditors said on the Appalachian Trail subreddit. He or she said, I am more interested in the wilderness experience than the social and party experience. So I've been to college twice. I don't crave the party experience that I once did. So hopefully that will help me save a lot of money. And if you haven't already, please subscribe, hit like, and share with other wannabe thru-hikers. And as always, happy hiking.